we have to create the right vibe, the energy, and everybody at the organization has to feel so privileged to be here. It's no other way.
Thanks for listening to the Purely Arsenal podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at Purely Arsenal FP for all the latest Arsenal podcasts.
Welcome to another edition of a Purely Arsenal sit-down podcast. It's been a few weeks, but we're back to winning ways. And as always, I've got Garet Kreutziger here. I've always feel like you're coming on with a win, mate. How are you, Garet?
I only pod when we're winning, Jack. That's just kind of the way it goes, right?
That's been the motto of this podcast for about 4 years.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. You've been regular this year, and I went, yeah, it's because we've been winning this year, to be honest. But we have, in fairness, it's been a difficult month, and we've kept them going a little bit, for sure, throughout the last month. And since we last spoke, it's obviously, things have turned a little bit. We've definitely had a little setback. This was our first win in 5, I think, in the league, which is a big, we've had a good season, so it's been a tough few games. But going into this game, Garet, there was a lot of line-up questions, which I think there was going into City. I think me and you were texting beforehand. I'd have 2 questions on the lineup. One, do you agree with the 3 changes? One was Kiwior for Holding, Jorginho for Partey, and Trossard for Martinelli. And the second one is, in hindsight, do you maybe look at it and think, could he have made these changes sooner? I'm not saying for the City game, because I can understand that it's really difficult to make changes for such a big game. Like, how do you do that? But I'm talking maybe the one before that, maybe the Southampton game, where we'd seen problems towards the end of the Liverpool game. We'd seen at West Ham we weren't very good other than the first 20. And maybe he could have made changes at that point. Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I wondered on those 2 points, were they the right changes? And do you maybe think they could have happened a little bit earlier at this point?
Yeah, I think I really expected Trossard to get back in. I wasn't sure for who in the front 4, but I think it was the right choice. I had maybe expected it to be for Jesus, just for the sake of preservation, considering he's coming off a long injury, played a lot of consecutive minutes. I thought maybe it would have been for him, but I think Martinelli's been really, really performing at a high level all season. So I was a little surprised to see it for Martinelli, but I think I've been saying for weeks that Trossard needs to be getting more minutes. I think he's such a good player, really helps with the whole control aspect of our game and really linking play together. So I wasn't too surprised by that. Kiwior, I think, was expected in the sense of we needed something different. And he's a player that we spent a lot of money on very recently that we haven't seen much of. And I think with Rob Holding, we all know what to expect from him. And it's not to discredit his ability or anything like that, but I think a change from his perspective was one that we could have expected, considering I think he had a really hard time against City. And I think we lack a lot of the same amount of control out of the back that we had with Saliba when he was playing in his spot. And Kiwior, as I understand it, played a lot of his time in Serie A in the holding midfield position. So you could kind of see how Arteta would want to implement him into the back 4 to try and re-establish that control. I was surprised by Jorginho, simply just because I know Partey has actually looked a little worse for wear the last couple of weeks, and I actually don't know if he's injured or not, but he runs like he is. He certainly doesn't look like he's fully fit like he was in the first half of the season. But Jorginho, to me, and at the time, I was a little nervous just because, to me, he's not a very physical player. And I worried about him turning and running back to goal to try and provide that cover for the back 4 that Partey is so, become known for. But, hindsight, sitting in the position we're in now, I mean, he had a fantastic game, I thought. So ultimately, 2 out of the 3 changes I expected, the third caught me by surprise, but it looks like Arteta knows ultimately what he's doing, because all 3 seem to have pretty good performances. I don't know about you. What did you think about the lineup?
I like the changes. I said before the game that I think Kiwior and Trossard should definitely start. And I got some pelters because I was actually suggesting that Kiwior could maybe even start if he wasn't going to start centrally, because Arteta has never started a left-footed player at the right centre-back position. And I heard Adrian Clark and a few other people talking earlier today when I was listening to the podcasts how, it shouldn't be any big deal to right-footers play all the time. But one thing I said on this podcast a while back is left-footed players just seem to be far more one-footed than right-footed players. Like, I don't know what it is, but left-footed, like if you look at notoriously, just talk about the ones that we've kind of worked with, Nicolas Pepe, think about even Lionel Messi and other players, they're pretty heavily on the one foot when they're left-footed. Whereas, so I thought that was really interesting that he brought him in directly for Rob Holding, though I thought it was absolutely necessary. And I thought he did a good job, actually. I thought he did. He got pushed off the ball a couple of times. He definitely looks like he needs to add a little bit of steel and strength to his game and get used to the physicality of the league. Luckily, he was playing against a feather duster in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, so that was good. But I thought he did. I was watching him really closely the first half because I was like, this is really interesting to me to watch Kiwior because we've heard a lot about him in practice. Now he's broken all the speed and agility records and all this kind of stuff. So I was really curious to see him. And I thought his distribution was pretty good. I could tell he was a bit uncomfortable sometimes when he's going to his right, especially early on in the first 10 minutes. But I thought his distribution was pretty good. A couple of times he lost the ball, but his recovery speed was really good in the first half.
Yeah, I agree. That was a nice thing to see was his athleticism. And just like his overall touch and control on the ball just seemed really reassuring. But I think it's hard to truly, it's a small sample size and it's hard to truly judge his performance because, like you said, like Aubameyang was miserable, and I think he would have loved to go up against a player in his current state, right? So
it was the perfect sort of warm-up match, if you like, for
at home,
what's to come. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Aubameyang had 9 touches, 4 from kickoffs. I mean, it was a devastatingly poor performance that we became very used to towards the end of his Arsenal career. In fact, it wasn't that surprising to Arsenal fans, I don't think, probably not even to Chelsea fans at this point. But the odd thing was I don't think he'd started a game since our last game against them. So it was pure vibes from Lampard just chucking him in because he was ex-Arsenal, which I thought was hilarious. But I agree on Jorginho. I was like umming and ahhing about it. And every time I see him, I get this sort of athleticism, the opposite vibe. I'm like, oh, athletically, I worry about him. But he was up against Enzo, Kovacic, Kante, and they aren't the most athletic and fast. So I thought it was a perfect game for him. He had time on the ball. He's really good at distributing the ball when he has time. It's where the ball gets turned over, we're high up the pitch. Can we recover, especially with Xhaka alongside him? Neither of them are blessed with speed as such. And then I agree with on Trossard. The hardest thing with Trossard is knowing who to start him for. I think you want to start him. You basically want to start him in every game, but you're going, well, who out of the front three misses out here to start him? And like you said, Jesus, I thought maybe Saka needs a rest. If you asked someone else, they would have said, maybe Odegaard needed a rest. Then obviously that would have been a terrible move. But I think I thought about Trossard. I'm like, he's so good, but I can't work out who to play him for in the games that I want to play him. But it's almost like, with him on the pitch, we play better. And I think that's been pretty evident all season. And if you look at his data all season, I mean, he's been an amazing January signing. I mean, probably one of the best, if not the best we've had in January. So I agree with you. I think there were 3 really good changes. What will be interesting, which we'll discuss towards the end of it, is what does he do now come the Newcastle game, which is a completely different test. I mean, a much harder test. I think they're probably the second most on-form team in the league other than Man City. They're playing for huge things, right? Their Champions League spot for the first time and in a long time. So it'll be really interesting. But it was really one-way traffic for the first 45 minutes. Chelsea were dreadful. I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, we probably should spend a minute or two just laughing how dreadful Chelsea are. I mean, isn't it like, I know people were saying over the last month, Arsenal bottling it, and I think, you can say all of that kind of stuff if you like. I definitely think we could have done better in a couple of games, but I think overall this season it's been, nothing short of pretty remarkable what Arsenal have achieved. I think when we look back at it, we'll think that. But there's surely the biggest shock of the season to the global sort of fan base and everyone watching the Premier League is the fact that the most expensive team in the world is currently sitting 12th in their domestic league and not safe from relegation. I mean, I find it quite unbelievable that it's not being talked about more. If it was Arsenal, it would be on every sports channel.
I know it'd be every headline, back pages, you name it. I mean, it would be like all over Twitter, every major feed, that all the banter pages. I mean, it would be relentless. I don't know what it is about Chelsea. They have some like aura over them that seems to protect them from like when they're really crap. I feel like they've been consistently top 4 and mid-table over the last, like, I don't know, 6-7 years, where they have like these phases where they finish 10th, 11th, 8th, and then they go on and win the Champions League the next season or something ridiculous. So, it is shocking. I gotta say, I have a very special place of hatred in my heart for Chelsea, and it just more so than some of the other clubs, I think, just because of when I started coming into supporting Arsenal. And I think that was really like when Chelsea was starting to ramp up. And I never really took too kindly to the way that they did things. They kind of were the pre-City, before City really came to prominence, the way the cash influx and the dirty owner and all this other shit. And, it's beautiful to see them be absolutely miserable, isn't it? I mean,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I mean, if we weren't having a great season, I'd take a lot of joy in just watching Chelsea this season. I mean, I really would. I mean,
you bet. Every weekend I'll be watching them. I'll be watching them play. Yeah, I mean, it's we've already kind of solidified our prominence over Tottenham. We're well and truly trying to get back to what we're trying to accomplish this season after a pretty shocking run that we've had to this point. So the only thing left for me to really be dialed in on, other than our results, is what's going to happen with Chelsea.
Yeah, I know you were saying before the pod that you're still all for the relegation battle. You never know. If they don't pick up points in their next two, then it's really on.
They've got a bad run ahead of them. Got to say,
they really do. And it wouldn't be lovely for Frank Lampard to sort of get them right in deep into that relegation scrap like he did with Everton last season. That'd be lovely. But they were dreadful, and I think you do have to, take the performance a little bit with a pinch of salt. But after 4 games that we had, where towards the end of those 4 games, we really did start to become like unrecognisable from that first half at Liverpool. I mean, it was really difficult to see. The team hadn't changed that much really from that point or at all. And you're seeing players, experienced players, not looking, like we said, Thomas Partey looked off, Zinchenko looked off. So it was really good to see a strong first half where we created a lot of chances, Garrett. And I mean, well, I guess we got to touch on the 2 Odegaard goals. I thought the first one was a peach of a goal, but Odegaard, I mean, he's come in for some criticism in the last month, and the big criticism towards him has been, he doesn't do it in the big games, or he doesn't do it when it really matters. Now, I don't know what your opinion is on that and on Odegaard overall this season.
I think that might be a little harsh, because if you look at our performance throughout the season, I think really the only team that we've struggled against mightily is City, and we've been really, really impressive. I mean, our position in the table tells you as much. We've been really impressive throughout the course of our season, and Chelsea, for all the struggles that they have had this year, have the most expensive team in England in terms of the amount of money that they spent, the amount of wages that they're committing, the contracts that they're giving guys. And they are a big club, and I think if you look back at some of the other it's just his performance, particularly against Chelsea, but if you look back at just his performance overall throughout the season, I think he's right there close to 15 goals in the Premier League. It's 14, I think, right now, with 8 assists. I mean, that's
14 and 7. It might be 14 and 7, but he's going to be at 8 at a weekend, I think.
Yeah, right. I know. I mean, if we have 4 games remaining, if he has 15 goals and 10 assists on a season, I mean, that's a massive contribution.
Huge. I had a tweet for you. I thought it was a fantastic tweet. I've got to call it out. I just sent it to someone. I should have sent it to you as well. It was a tweet on the amount of midfielders that have scored overall across seasons, and I've completely lost it. But it basically said that Odegaard is like basically very, very close to being the top goal-scoring midfielder, alongside maybe De Bruyne, I think it was, in the history of the Premier League. I've got to find the tweet and I'll call it out in a second. But 14-7, like you said, Garrett, I mean, that's a pretty good return. And I think why I agree with you why it's harsh is when we're not good in big games, like, I don't know, City away, City at home at times, the whole team's not good. It's the collective that's not good. Do you know what I mean? And Bergkamp and Henry used to get these accusations. So it's not like, and I just find it a little bit frustrating because when we are good in big games, Tottenham away, Chelsea away, Liverpool at home, Liverpool away for a good period, United at home, Odegaard's like the brain to all of it. You know, he's instrumental.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought him and Xhaka, though it was odd with Xhaka. I mean, Xhaka basically had 3 assists in this game if you count the third one, and you can't knock anyone for that. I was getting frustrated with him just before he had the first assist because the ball. He was in such good positions for the first 10 minutes of the game, and it would break down just a little bit with him. But then he had 2 amazing assists. What's frustrating is we didn't see that Xhaka against City. He just came off sickness. Maybe there was something off a little bit with him. Yeah. But him and Odegaard, they really came out of themselves where they've not been very good in the last 2 or 3 games. And you've got to give Jorginho credit for that as well, because Partey's really been the one in the central midfield that has been off for 3 or 4 games. He's been very, since he had that moment against West Ham, where Declan Rice took the ball off him, and he's just not looked the same since that moment. It's a little bit odd, isn't it, Garrett? Like you said before, you said maybe is he carrying an injury? Doesn't seem to have that zip about him. And I wonder what you think about, because Newcastle was so athletic, looking a little bit ahead to that. Are you a little bit worried about going with Jorginho? Because I personally am, even though he looked really assured in this game.
Yeah, I think I'd be curious maybe later on after we get through this match. I'd like to hear what you think Arteta will do with the lineup for that game.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah,
if we compare Chelsea to Newcastle in their current state, we've got a lot on our hands when it comes to the Newcastle match, especially away St. James's Park, long trip. End of the season. I am concerned about their athleticism. I mean, you just see the clips of their players just taking on entire teams, running down the touchline and just putting the ball on a plate for some guy to tap in. And it's pure athleticism, power, and speed. So I'd be curious. I don't know if there was a half an eye on Newcastle with leaving Partey on the bench to try and give him some fresh legs, because he looks a little run ragged. I totally agree. But what do you feel just before you move on from that, what do you feel about people that say that the Saliba thing's really affected him? Because there was a stat that came out with Rob Holding, I'm sure you saw it, with Rob Holding at centre-back, and said we sit about 7 metres deeper, and Partey's been basically dropping in to help him. In this game, funnily enough, they judged it from the last Rob Holding game to this game, and just having Kiwior in the centre-back pushed us up 7 metres. So he went from 40 to has pushed the whole team up about 7 metres. I don't know if you think that might be a factor, because I don't know. I'm just looking at the data. It very well may. I mean, I can definitely see how Partey would struggle not having such an assured presence on the pitch like Saliba. And it's crazy. We talk about him like he's some refined 30-year-old center back that's been doing it for years and commands such presence, and he's so young and he has so much more to go. But it's true though. I think without him, we really feel the lack of security that we have, and I really think that he's kind of like the key that unlocks the midfield, Saliba, because he really does dominate such an amount of our half. Even when we're in and out of possession, you can just kind of tell he really dictates play from the back forward. And I think that would make a lot of sense to me when you look at Partey's positioning, because when you have a guy that partnership, I don't want to discount Gabriel either. Saliba and Gabriel together, I think you could probably say is the best partnership in the Premier League if you were to look at the results that we were compiling with them together. And I think when you have that type of foundation with those 2 players, it really releases a lot of pressure off of the midfield. And there was such synergy with the team with Saliba in it. And I think that honestly, that synergy, I think, for the last 4 weeks has been amiss. And when you look at the team that was selected for Chelsea, I don't know if Arteta was trying to recreate that type of style of play, or kind of get that synergy back into play. But Kiwior really kind of gave us back that presence. I felt in this match, and I bet you I would not be shocked to see him again.
Yeah. Do you think one injury, there's been some argument against Arteta, which I partially agree with, in that in the last 2 years, we lost Tierney and Partey, and we didn't recover, and we lost top four. We lost Saliba, and I think you have to add in Tomiyasu to that, and we dropped off again. Do you think there's an argument, understanding all the limitations of the side, and that we're ahead of schedule, and financially the limitations, and you can only cover so many positions? Do you think, even withstanding that, do you think that Mikel Arteta should be a little bit better at I know it's hard, but to adapt and adjust a little bit quicker with the team? Because I feel like we lost so much from those two injuries in terms of the way we play and the way we set up. And I can understand why when I see those players, but sometimes I look at it and think, when you clearly see it's not working, like the Rob Holding, for example, could we look to do something a little bit sooner? Or I just wonder if you think...
I think it's going to be part of Arteta's maturity process as a manager. I think, and you can kind of see it in the early days of him being with Arsenal. He had his core group, and if you weren't part of it, you just weren't in the team. At all, no matter the circumstances. Like, think what you want about Mesut Ozil and his time at the end. There were opportunities for him to contribute, I think, but Arteta was so far out of his mind that there was no chance of him being part of the squad. And I think as the seasons have gone on, you see a little bit of that. Like, we put, oh gosh, what is it, 18, 19 together for a match day squad. There's only 13 that are part of the squad, really, right? So I think it's part of his maturity process as a manager to be a bit like let's pick the best players for the match, right? Let's put the best 11 on the pitch. Let's not pick your favorite 11 or the 11 that are in your good graces at this moment in time, or that you have trust in, quote unquote, right? Like, these are all Arsenal players. We paid a lot of money to build this squad as we have to date. We have to be more flexible in using that, and using those resources. So it might be hindsight and so on, but I feel like maybe if this team steps in against Southampton, if this team steps in to a different capacity against West Ham, when we're struggling and we're looking for something to change, we just dealt with a bad it sounds like a defeat, but we just had dealt with a bad result against Liverpool. It's like, we need to change something up, like maybe Trossard's supposed to be part of the team a little earlier. Maybe we have a Gabriel Martinelli that comes on 60 minutes after Trossard's been giving him hell for an hour, and it's the last thing a fullback wants to see is a fresh Martinelli coming on to run at him for another 30 minutes. Like, those I think are the things that we need to start, or Mikel Arteta needs to start implementing into the squad. And I don't know if it's a lack of trust in the full squad, or maybe a lack of trust in their ability to play the way that he wants the team to play. But it might be one of those things that we go back and regret.
Yeah. It's just like for example, Kieran Tierney was last season. It was like, Kieran Tierney's out. What are we going to do? Do you know what I mean? And this season he started 5 Premier League games, and he doesn't want to use him. And I personally, with the way the squad's developed, I actually quite understand why he doesn't want to use him. But when things change and you have an injury and you have to be able to adapt, I don't necessarily think Kieran Tierney was necessarily the answer to our problems. But my point is that how quickly can the trust of that core go away? We have to do something about that, because we're sitting here this season with a lot of changes to the squad, and you're going, he still only trusts about 13 of these players. And we said the same thing last season. And we've developed the squad since then. So it just feels like, he has to be able to expand that core. And obviously there's still some players in the squad like Tierney and like Holding that he never purchased. So So I get it. There's still some development to go, but what I'd really love to see next season is especially with Champions League, is to be able to trust just that few 16, 17, to just be able to trust a bigger. Right. We have to, and for that we have to get the quality in. But I really think what he needs to do is we can't buy anyone anymore that's a possibility, like a rotational option. For example, like some people were saying, I like Reece Nelson, but some people were saying I think Reece Nelson is our right winger, second option, give him a new contract. And I disagreed, because why I disagreed was I haven't seen any evidence that Reece Nelson can start a period of games instead, and we can sit for Xhaka for a week or two. I'm not saying Xhaka hasn't had that for 2 years. So my answer is no. You went for Rafinha 18 months ago. He was a right winger. You need to be going for that type of player again. You need to be going for someone that comes in and thinks they're going to start ahead of Bukayo Saka, just like Trossard does. He thinks he should start ahead of Martinelli or Jesus. You can tell just by the way he plays. He thinks that, and that's the only way he's going to trust the core more. And I'm not saying this because I don't think he's going to do it. I do. I love Mikel Arteta and they're doing the transfer market. I'm just saying, look, when I'm watching this, I'm like, how are we at a point where we don't trust a bigger part of the core once again? But the Saliba and Tomiyasu injuries both at one is just a very unlucky and frustrating moment. The stat that I had was the most ever non-penalty goals from Premier League season by midfielders is Kevin De Bruyne with 15 last season, Yaya Toure 14, Lampard 13, Gerrard 12, Cesc Fabregas 12. Odegaard is on 14. He's got 4 games to go. And he's 24. And that's another thing when people compare. De Bruyne obviously was the difference against probably in both City games. But De Bruyne at Odegaard's age was on loan at Wolfsburg, and I do think you've got to take that into account as well, because the development was very similar with Odegaard and De Bruyne in the sense that they were loaned out a lot. They went to a big club. It didn't quite happen to them. They went loan again. There is some similarity. They're very different players, but I just think sometimes we're not judging player. We've got a very, very young team, the youngest in the league alongside Southampton. So I just think got to judge that a little bit. But he was fantastic, wasn't he? In the first half. I mean, I think him and Xhaka they ran the show, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, I think just to kind of get back on track with the Chelsea match. The first half, the first 20 minutes, I could tell that there was a different air about this team, about this game, about the way that our approach. I don't know if it was being at home. I don't know if it was the fact that we didn't have City in our rearview mirror and now we're chasing after them. I don't know what it was, but it felt different, and it felt like they were so sharp and so fast, so good on the ball. The movement was crisp, and maybe part of it is the fact that Chelsea are absolute crap right now. But I think that might be a disservice to how good we were to start this match. And, just for the first goal, the movement through the lines. And then I think for both of Odegaard's goals, the first one, I think Xhaka does so good to pick out Odegaard as opposed to just kind of get into a position and play a ball. You can see him pick his head up. And in the first instance, you can just see Odegaard, put his hand up, and they make eye contact, and it's a great pullback. And I mean, Odegaard has all the time in the world. Yeah, he has all the time in the world to put that ball in the top corner. And I think, part of his development, like you were just talking about, is like seeing that execution this season. Because I think in last season and earlier in his career, earlier really, he's so young as it is. But there were instances even this season where, like, in those opportunities, he's putting those wide. He's putting it straight at the keeper. He's putting it over.
Taking the extra touch, maybe.
Yeah, the extra touch, or maybe he's taking that touch and he's looking to play another player in, as opposed to like, boom, one touch, curled in the top net corner. Hit it with good pace, hit perfect precision. He's a player with such skill that we should expect to see this type of execution from him. It was such a good goal. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing with it. Kepa didn't stand a chance. There was only really one way, like the way he opened up his body where that ball was going to go. He was going straight right across Kepa into the top corner. And he hit it with such pace and precision that he even got a hand to it, good matter, off the goal, off the bottom of the bar and in. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a perfect way to start. Yeah,
really, really good. And it was great to see us, obviously got the second, which looked like a bobbly one, but it was a lovely finish. Again, it was a great ball from Xhaka. We obviously noticed something about them not picking up men on the edge of the box, because we were playing that ball 3 or 4 times, I think. But it's a lovely finish as well.
Yeah, I think Chelsea in both instances will be disappointed with their midfield and their ability to track Odegaard. But I think it's also very clever movement by Odegaard, which is great to see, because he's not just taking space, right? He's moving with intent, and you see Odegaard, drift on the second goal. I believe he drifted right behind Sterling. Sterling didn't have a clue where he was. Sterling, I think, thought he knew where he was, because he might have thought that he just was taking up space on the edge of the box, cuts right in behind him. And I think that's the first goal looks great. I mean, it's perfect. It's a low ball on the ground, gets good pace, hits it in the top corner. That second goal, I think, is a lot harder to finish than that first one was, because it's
bobbling, yeah.
A bobble. It hits the ground right before he's able to make contact to it. He controls it, puts it back in the ground, and again, Kepa didn't have a chance to keep it out. And it's just, at that point, I think, what was it, the 31st minute, Odegaard gets that second goal, and although we had been in these 2-0 positions very recently, and it came back to bite us, you just felt that there was a different pace and momentum of this game that we were moving in. And I mean, I personally felt pretty assured at this point. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I did. It was nice to see us get the third, though. Don't get me wrong. It's all I'm going. It's all one-way traffic here, but it would be very, very nice. We got it. So, I mean, it was a dreadful goal from their perspective. I mean, they were all over the place at that point, weren't they? But again, it puts all of our front four on 10 league goals or more. Gabriel Jesus, who's been out for 3 months.
Happened? Genuinely.
And I think it happened once with Podolski, Giroud, Santi Cazorla, and someone else. I saw a stat on that. It happened once with us. I don't think it ever happened with the Invincible group. Well, we've already scored 7 or 8 goals more than the Invincibles did this season. I believe the Invincibles scored somewhere around 73, 74 goals, and I think we're close to 80, aren't we? We're close to 80 goals. I've got to look at the Premier League table.
Right now,
I think
we're 81.
81, yeah. I genuinely think the Invincibles scored like 73, 74 goals in that season. Obviously, goals aren't everything, but we obviously conceded probably less that season. I think the conceded zone is obviously our issue. But like you just said, if we'd kept our centre-backs fit, I think we probably would have been very, very close to the best defence in the league. And that's easy to say in hindsight, but the teams above us in it haven't had the injuries we've had at centre-back. Like City really haven't had an injury at centre-back. They had Ake out for about a week and a half. That's all they had at left-back. They've basically been fully fit all along. They had a couple with John Stones, but John Stones wasn't playing at centre-back at the time, so it didn't really matter. And obviously they have 60 million centre-backs to come in, like Laporte. We've got 2 million Rob Holding. There's just a huge difference there, which you can't... Those are just facts. It's not excuses, it's just facts. But I was definitely at ease, but that is amazing, isn't it? I mean, people, what do you think about the argument of? There's been some argument against Gabriel Jesus over the last few weeks that he's missed a few chances, certainly against Southampton at home and things like that. I didn't get a chance to discuss that with you and things like that, and that we need a more prolific striker, or that we need a different profile of striker, coming into the next window. I mean. What would your thought process be?
I think a different profile striker is definitely something. I mean, if you just look at the way the squad's built right now, like if it's not Jesus, we're playing like a false 9, more or less.
Yeah, or Eddie, but he didn't even get on Eddie, which was interesting with a 3-0.
No, he did not get on. Yeah, you're right. No, Eddie, you're right. I take that back. Eddie is probably more of a traditional number 9, but stature-wise,
and they're not providing much different.
Exactly. I agree. That's I think where I was trying to get with that is really like there's no alternate option to how we would approach the center forward position. Goodness, I forget what your question was, but it
was just about whether you think the criticism for Jesus over the last few weeks has been a lot of people saying drop in for a trial. I agree.
It's harsh because Jesus has been scoring since he came back. Maybe not in such a prolific manner like we would like. I really was kicking myself. I mean, I couldn't believe that. I think it was Southampton where he had an opportunity. It was just looped right over the top of the back 4, and he put it over the bar. Like those,
he had a few in that game.
Right? Yeah, I think those are the things where I'm like, come on, man. Like to be where we're trying to be. Those are opportunities that at least have to be on target. Make the keeper make a save type of a situation. But if you look at, I think that's just kind of who he's always been, right? He's always been that guy that might waste a few chances, but then he'll pop up and put a scrappy goal away, like he did to get us 3-0 up against Chelsea. You know, he's in and around. He's very busy. He's a pest. He's probably a center back playing's worst nightmare because of his work rate and the way he closes down and everything. And I think you give Xhaka a hat trick of assists one way or not in this match, but without the relentlessness that I think Jesus is renowned for worldwide from many different angles, whether it be his pressing or the way he runs off of defenders and he takes up those channels and everything. We don't get that third goal, and it's because of his personality and the way that he plays that we get that. And I mean, 3-0, 34 minutes in, it was scrappy, it was ugly for the third goal, but I mean, I'll take that every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 10. I think that's 10 and 5 or somewhere around that for his stats this season. For a guy that's not played for 3.5 months, I mean, that's going some. And I think we survived the Jesus injury pretty well, but we survived it with some makeshift stuff. Eddie started to drop off, and Trossard became a really fantastic sort of temporary option for us there. One of which I think could well be an option again next season. I don't necessarily think it will be a super common one, but
I have a question on Eddie and his drop off. I want to come back to after we're done chatting about Chelsea.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to remind you. I like talking about Eddie. Well, because I think there is a conundrum this summer, so maybe it will kind of link into that. But I argued over the last few weeks that we were playing 3-0 football at 2-0. So I can't be that upset that we played 3-0 football at 3-0, because that's what we did in the second half. We basically, I believe, we kind of just not switched off. We dropped off a little bit. I'd like us to be a bit more effective at doing it. My frustration with playing 3-0 football at 3-0 the way we did it against Chelsea was not that I was super uncomfortable or nervous, though I didn't like it when the goal went in, but is that I think we're set up at times to be a really good counter-attacking team. Like we brought on Martinelli, for example, for Trossard. And I feel like sometimes we don't use that enough when we're playing that 3-0 football. Just sit, go. And I think we've got Xhaka on one side, Martinelli on the other side, and we've got pace to burn to a certain degree. And I feel like we don't utilise that quite well enough. I mean, obviously the nerves of the last few weeks probably played into the fact that when the goal went in, everyone got a little bit tetchy, but how can we best sort of bridge this gap of just being a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more assured at 3-0 up? Do you just think it's the fact that the lineup's changed, it's a new lineup, and it's getting everyone comfortable with each other? But it just does feel like there's a sort of slight mental block there amongst the group,
I think there's probably a bit of recency that played into that, the past couple of weeks. I mean, let's just call it is what it is. Like, I don't want to call us ballers or choke artists or anything like that, but the drop off in the table and the points tally that we've had over the last couple of weeks, it's not a good look, and I think that had probably played into the players' minds. I mean, you have to think about it from this perspective. Like, if we're aware of it, if I'm aware of it, all the way over here in California, guys that are there on the pitch, like, they're aware of it 100%. It might not impact them greatly because they're professional athletes and they're just a different breed, but like, they're aware of it and they know that they just need to get through it. And I just have to imagine that, like, there was a bit of conservative, they're a bit conservative in their approach in the second half. And, I think Xhaka might have said after the game that they were in the locker room, like, we need more. More. Like, right. Like, I think he explicitly said as much to Sky or something after the match was done. And that's great to hear, but it didn't really look like that
No, it didn't.
From just watching the game. Which isn't to say that we weren't still effective. Like, we still had opportunities. I think Xhaka had an opportunity to score, and he just kind of got caught up with the ball under his feet a little too much. It was a great save nonetheless. I mean, he put it, you could see what he was trying to do with it and just slotted into the far corner of the bottom of the goal. But Xhaka Saka had a shot.
Odegaard had one from the edge that kept saved. Yeah.
So it's not to say opportunities weren't created, but I hear what you're saying, because I do feel like when we are in a position where we're 2-0, 3-0 up, we have the pace and the power and the precision to let the other teams come on to us give us the space in our attacking half of the pitch and run on into it, because we're so effective in transition. So effective. I mean, you've seen it all season. When we get those, 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s, 4-on-3s, we're so deadly like that. I feel like when we really get held up is when we let teams get caught up, low block, 4-and-4, two banks of 4 right in front of us, and that's, I feel like when we really struggle to break teams down. And in my personal opinion, I don't know if you share this opinion. I'd be curious to hear what you think, but I think that will come with time. Our ability to be that instinctive on the pitch, because like you said, to start the pod off, I mean, outside of Southampton, this is a very young group, still learning how to execute at the top flight of, arguably European football. Yeah.
And it could well get younger, because if you look at the areas that most people say, I think we could switch something here, it's the aging players, centre midfield. Those kind of areas, the players that are getting on to their 30s that we're going, maybe we could. So the level of the squad is not necessarily, obviously everyone's getting 1 year older, of course, but, the collective might actually still be pretty young next year.
Definitely. Well, I mean, you look at the collective is what makes us so deadly. The collective, the youth is what has been built around this team, is what's gotten us to this position. Outside of Thomas Partey, I think is I feel bad kind of talking down on him, because he's been so integral to our success.
He's been massive this season. I think there's some recency, a sort of bias there with a lot of the fan base here.
I think it's good to be aware of that too. I agree. 3 or 4 weeks to really put a cloud over how effective he's been this season, because to be quite honest, without him, I think we'd be in a very different position.
Oh yeah, no question.
Like if
do you worry though, if we're going to talk sort of, plays devil advocate a little bit? We're only playing 1 game a week, and we're still very, very concerned about his health and his fitness levels. And I think the reason I made the argument, I don't know who I was talking to. I said I think I'd rather sign a big player at the 6 than the 8, was because I'm convinced that, for example, Granit Xhaka, I know Granit Xhaka can play twice a week. I'm not even certain I can put 90 minutes into Partey's leg once a week. And the quality without consistency it doesn't mean anything. So, that's where we lose it. We've really, I think, nurtured Partey to a position where we can basically play him for most of the game once a week. Yeah. And we've kind of got away with it, but he's still missed 7 or 8 games this season in the Prem. Barely played in Europe. So I just we do have to look at that as well, don't we, Gav? Because to keep the level high, can't change the league team much in the Champions League unless it's for quality. Right. You've got to be looking at that position, and I don't necessarily think Jorginho is the answer, for next season.
He's a temporary solution. I mean, it's obvious, right? I mean, look at all the players we were linked with and made bids for on deadline day, and everything else in between in the midfield, and it just didn't pan out. And Jorginho just happens to fall in our lap, January. And I think that was not, I don't want to discount Jorginho, because his contribution this season, Aston Villa, and some of the great performances he's put in, he played very well against Chelsea. I don't want to take that away from him at all. But he's not the solution, right? I think the Caicedo and Declan Rice, and you see all these links to like big midfield talents. I mean, there's even some talk about Jude Bellingham, but that would never happen. But I mean, you just think about the players we're being linked with, the age profile, how prolific they are, how massive stars in Europe. I mean, those are the players we should be linked with, to be quite honest. And I'm happy that we're back in that bracket again. But the fact that they all seem to revolve around the center of our midfield, God bless you, is
I muted myself at the point.
I know is pretty evident in the club's lack of faith in Thomas Partey's ability to play multiple times a week. We're going to be in 4 competitions next season.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. No, you're right. And we're not going to have the excuses of, we want to drop out the cups early. I think next year most fans are going to be expecting to compete at least in two of those, you know. And I think that would be right. So, but I agree with you as well. You've got to understand that, you know, he has been a huge part of what has been good this season. Another player that has come in for some criticism defensively in the recent weeks is Zinchenko. And on the third goal, it's probably him switching. Well, it is. You know, he said as much at the end. He's very honest about his performances, but he does keep making the same defensive errors. Do you have concerns there? My argument on Zinchenko was I was speaking to some Liverpool fans, and I said I think you've got with Trent a little bit of what we've got with Zinchenko, in that when everything's really good, yet he looks amazing. Like Trent, Liverpool been on a bit of a run since they played us. And it was the same. But when something's slightly off, the central men aren't covering him as well, your back four switches up, he looks really, really vulnerable. Is this just something we're going to have to get used to, Garrett? Or would you look for a stronger alternative that Mikel Arteta trusts, at least?
To me, Zinchenko, actually, I got blasted on Twitter because I responded to a tweet. And it was it's like a nobody. I don't even know why so many people saw it and responded to it. But I called Zinchenko a liability. And it wasn't this match. I think it was another game that he struggled defensively. I can't remember.
He had Liverpool where Trent nutmegged him.
He got nutmegged and scored on. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it was Liverpool, right? And man, I really got put on blast by a bunch of people for, hey, that's disrespectful, and all this other stuff. But I really stand by that. I mean, yeah. For all of the good that he brings to us going forward, and call me old-fashioned, but like I really want my defenders to be good defenders, like proper defenders. Like that's your foundation. That's what you build off of, and then anything you add on top of that is just cherry on top of the cake, right? It's frosting and sprinkles and all the good stuff. I can't honestly look at Zinchenko and say like that's the finished article that we need at left back. And it feels like a little blasphemous because I've been on this pod saying how transformative he is and all this other stuff to the way we play, which I think is absolutely true going forward.
Be both, yeah.
Going forward, yeah. I mean, absolutely. You can see the level of control that he brings. I mean, there's periods in the game where he's playing at right wing. I'm like, what are you doing up there? You know, but at the same time, I think you have to double back on the conversation we were just having previously. You have to look at who he was most effective with in this team that was playing as part of that back four. I mean, Gabriel, Saliba, and Ben White were effectively playing as a back three when they were all together, and Zinchenko was just all over the pitch.
Yeah, and that allowed it because it was so good.
Exactly, it released him to do have that type of freedom.
Yep.
And I think this, to me, without Saliba, you can't look at Zinchenko if I'm Arteta and tell him he has the same freedom.
License,
I don't think Zinchenko, the same license to roam and be all over the place. But I don't think Zinchenko's going to play any other way.
He can't.
Right? He can't. And I know you've got an opinion on Kieran Tierney, but to me, he needs, over the last 4 weeks and moving forward, to be more involved. He has to.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that. I think my argument, I think I come across really anti-Tierney on Twitter, and I think it's mainly just to wind up of 3 or 4 people that I kind of like to wind up about him. But it's the actual truth of the matter with me on Tierney is I can tell Mikel Arteta doesn't try. Take the Liverpool game, for example. We're under the cosh. They're all over us the last 30 minutes. Now, if Tomiyasu's fit, Zinchenko's off. He's off the pitch. But Zinchenko plays till like the 87th minute and they score. And then he takes him off. So what that tells me is, whether it's me or not, Mikel Arteta does not trust Kieran Tierney. He doesn't trust him because everything was telling you to shut up shop and get your better defenders on the pitch. And he didn't believe Kieran Tierney was one of them. And
why do you think that is? I can't make sense of it.
Well, I do think his defensive abilities are better than Zinchenko's. But I do think that, for example, when he came on against Liverpool, he was really lucky not to give a penalty away. Salah got behind him twice, and I think it kind of got just forgotten because we managed to see the game out with 2-2. But we actually, when Zinchenko came off, we actually just continue to get worse defensively. And I think something has obviously happened over the last 12 months where he's used Tierney and he's felt he's not really answered his problems. But he's basically, when Tomiyasu was fit, and we've needed that, because there's no way Mikel Arteta is not seeing the vulnerabilities of Zinchenko defensively. He's too intelligent not to see this. We're all seeing he's too intelligent. So what he's doing is he's looking at it and he's going, I don't think I've got an alternative that really provides me with a good enough defensive solution here. But he would if he had Tomiyasu. And the weird thing with Tomiyasu is I still think he was a temporary stopgap for what we're looking for. I think we'll buy a left back. I think without doubt we'll buy a left back in the summer. And I think it's really interesting with Zinchenko to look at, because who are we aiming for? We're aiming to catch City, right? That's the goal. And Pep Guardiola, when would he use Zinchenko? He started 10 games in his final season of Man City's. A majority of the games that he would come on in was like the game they won the league in, when they were 2-0 down, they had 30 minutes left and they needed someone to change the game for them. And they needed to be basically to take a chance. And he was their player to take a chance from left back. He's basically a number 10 at left back. And what did they do this season? They had Cancelo, who was ahead of him last season. They saw that he started to have the same frailties that the Zinchenko had. If you remember the game at Anfield where Salah did him and Pep Guardiola fell to his knees. What did he do? He removes Cancelo completely from the team and plays a centre-back at left back who starts to learn the game going forward, just like Ben White did. But he's so strong defensively that nobody can get past him. And I think we will do that next season. I think we will do that as an alternative, at the very least an alternative to Zinchenko.
So to play devil's advocate, why do you think Kieran Tierney is not capable of doing that same exact thing?
If you want my honest opinion,
Yeah.
I believe he doesn't believe he's a technically good enough footballer. I believe that when he gets the ball, he doesn't believe he's technically good enough on the ball. And to be honest with you, I agree with it. When I see Kieran Tierney on the ball, and I have to say, I think this about Tomiyasu at times as well. And I think what gets Tomiyasu out of it is he's so versatile. He can play anywhere in the back four, but Kieran Tierney can't really do that. And I think there is times where I watch Kieran Tierney with the ball and he will just literally whip it long into space, we just haven't played like that for like 12 months. And every time I see it, I think he's going to, and he really tried against West Ham when he started, I think he started against West Ham at away, and he was doing so good in the first 20 minutes. He was coming in, he was inverting, and then he just went back to because he's an old-fashioned left back. Don't get me wrong, I think Kieran Tierney will be a fantastic left back for a team fighting for the top four, probably Newcastle or someone like that, who are probably going to be fighting for the league next season, to be honest. But for a team that plays in a different style to what Mikel Arteta is trying to set us up in. But Mikel Arteta is trying to set us up in a way that is so dominant on the ball. It is a way where everyone is basically a two-footed player. Your fullbacks are like number 10s and terrific. Even Ben White's a terrific player on the ball. I mean, he's really good. And I just don't think he believes he's a technically good enough footballer. And I actually personally agree with that. I do personally agree with that. Whilst I think he's got brilliant attitude, Kieran Tierney. I think I can't have any complaints about him as a human being, as what he's done when he's been starting. But I actually, on this one, I think I see where Arteta's coming from.
I gotta say, Jack, if he ends up at City next year, he will.
I will be stunned with that. I will. I saw the links. I will be. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll be stunned if he ends up at City and plays anywhere near more than what Zinchenko was playing. Put it that way, which is 10 starts in the Premier League. I just am not seeing it. I'm not seeing how Kieran Tierney comes in and displaces Ake or something like that. I'm just not seeing how that's a feasible thing. I think Newcastle or a Villa, or maybe even a United or someone like that. I could see something like that because they play in a slightly different way. But look who he tried to sign before Zinchenko. Who did he try to sign? Lisandro Martinez. That was a centre back, very very strong defensively, but good on the ball. I think that's what he's looking for. He's probably still looking for that. I think he's probably still looking for that two-way left back. And it'll be really interesting because like last season, I think some of us thought left back would be something he targeted, but not a lot of us. Some people were really surprised with some of the changes Mikel Arteta made to the team. Like Leno was a huge surprise a couple of years ago for a lot of people, wasn't it? Like they were like, "We're replacing Leno. What are we doing?" So sometimes you don't see the change that he might make. I do wonder on the Zinchenko one. I'm watching it. I'm going. I wonder if we've already started to think past him. and he's so good, and that's incredible to think that, isn't it? Really, but
he's so good, but I think he has some holes in his game that are not allowing us to be at the level that, I mean, it's hard for anyone to be there, but at the level that City are at, because he opens up vulnerabilities in our team, and I don't know if it's lack of concentration or not enough experience playing left back, or just the fact that he's not defensively minded, or whatever it may be. But Chelsea's goal against us this week, it was 100% avoidable if he just tracks his runner in a decent way. I mean, like he was aware of what's his name?
Maduik.
Maduik, something like that. Yeah, and he runs off of him, but the way he runs with him is like so vertical, right? He tracks him so vertically rather than laterally, and he gets beat. He gets beat so easily, and it's just Had we not been, I mean, imagine we're 2-0 up at that time, and that goal happens. I mean, it'd been a very, Aaron Ramsdale, we failed to mention, made a fantastic save, 1-0.
Oh, from Chilwell, yes. Unbelievable save.
The vibe and the overall feeling of the stadium and the trajectory of that game would have been much different had he converted that chance. And I think ultimately, looking back, 3-1 was probably the appropriate scoreline. Just Chelsea were pretty bad. Maybe they didn't deserve the goal, but for 30 minutes, 35 minutes, we were not at the level we were for 60 minutes. And I think we were good enough for an hour to really put them to bed and just see it out. But we went top of the league. Here we are Wednesday night, our time, no longer top of the league. But I think I think that is the game that we're going to have to play the rest of this season, is
just trying to
apply the pressure. Apply the pressure. We've been talking a lot about Newcastle and their athleticism. We got to go to St. James's Park, and I think we play after City this weekend.
I think so. I think they play Leeds on Saturday, maybe.
They play 7 at 7. We played 8:30.
Oh, they play on the same day, do they? Okay.
Yeah, well, so it's 7 our time and 8:30, right? They play same day, but their match will be essentially concluding right when we kick off. So we could be 4 points behind them at kickoff, most likely. But we gotta keep it on them. It would be such a shame for them to just wrap this season up and win the league by 7 or 6 points, and it would be such a shame. And I would hate for the last 2 games of the season to be meaningless, and I would hate for them to go to Brighton and have to play. What's their schedule? I had this
but they have Brighton and Brentford on the last week.
Brighton and Brentford, right? I mean, those are not
away both
things, right?
No.
And if anything, like, no one should be surprised that Manchester City win the league, but at least they need to sweat it out.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right?
I know what you mean. The problem with that is we've got to go to Newcastle and win. I didn't have anything really more to touch on in this game. Yeah. There was a point that I made on Nelson once again coming on ahead of Smith Rowe, and I found that not interesting because I kind of expected it, but there's definitely something there with Smith Rowe that we might have to revisit in the summer, isn't there?
I think there's really something there too with Nelson. Honestly, I recall back on the All or Nothing, the Amazon documentary that was done,
right?
And Arteta sees something in Nelson that
he likes him. Yeah,
he likes him a lot. He's liked him ever since he came on as the manager.
Do you think he's just trying to convince him to stay at this point? Because he's rejected the contract offer. That's what came out this morning, by the way. He rejected the contract offer. He's most likely, I presume, being offered a lot more money to go elsewhere, because we're not going to offer him big money if we're not going to make him, a bigger part of the squad and, make him a star or whatever. So do you think this part of it is just trying to convince the player?
If it's me, I'm convincing him to stay, because, like we said, we've got 4 different competitions we're spread across next season.
Yeah.
4. I mean, that's a
yeah.
lot of matches. I mean, right now, off the top of my head, we probably play. I have to take Europa League into account too, but 50 matches this season.
And we've been out pretty early in the cups, yeah.
Very early in the cups. Yeah. You know, we played the group stages of Europa League and got into a couple rounds into the knockouts, and we got out early in the FA Cup and the League Cup, and that's not going to be acceptable to any level next season.
No.
I mean, you could probably add another 10 matches on top of that.
Yeah.
Plus or minus, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And you look at the squad that was part of Chelsea. I mean, we need those players to be part of that. And I mean, the way when I watch Nelson, I think he's a baller. Is the way the touch.
Oh, I like him.
He's a game changer. He has that kind of it factor about him when he's out there. We haven't seen enough of him. He hasn't been consistent enough in his performances. He's failed on a couple of loan spells. But, like, boy, wouldn't it hurt to see him go somewhere and Serge Gnabry 2.0? I mean, that would not be fun. Yeah,
he's been linked to Milan and Brighton are heavily in for him. I think he's going to be sold, or he's going to go. And I think the reason is predominantly game time and wages. And I think he does want to stay at Arsenal. I mean, he's been with us since he was like 8, so I can't see why he wouldn't. But I hear from what I read, the contract offer from us is not massively significant. So I think it's a bit of the Emi Martinez sort of situation. Not quite, but Villa were offering him 30 grand more a week or something crazy than we were. And the simple reason for that was it was a free transfer for them, where it was a player that we're trying to retain for us. I like him a lot. I also really, truly believe that if I was going to sign one player in the front three next season, it would be a right winger. So I'm kind of torn on it because he is a right winger, but I'm convinced that we need a right winger that from the start coming in is basically saying, I'm going to take your place, Bukayo Saka. And obviously I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I want a player coming in with that mentality. And not saying Nelson doesn't necessarily have it. I just think it might be quite hard when a player's had so many loan spells and, he's been with us for so long. And I think you're right. Arteta really, really likes him. He sees something in him. And
he does a lot.
That'll be frustrating. My question, just to spin off that, before to ask you for your Newcastle prediction, was if you were to say anywhere from 3 to 5 players that would be sold this summer, that are part of the first team group, so not including Pepe and Niles, is your Cedrics, who would be those up to 5 players that you believe may well be sold?
With the squad currently.
The squad currently, not including the ones that are on loan. Yeah.
I mean, it pains me to say it genuinely, but I think Kieran Tierney will be sold.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think he'll be sold.
I know he's on loan, and this is what I said wasn't included, but probably Nuno Tavares along with that, right?
Oh, to me, he's already gone.
He's gone, yeah, okay.
Nuno Tavares, I don't think he's ever coming back. Have you heard about the issues he's having in France?
Yeah, I heard he got removed from training or something crazy. He seems to have issues a lot of places that he goes, disciplinary wise. So
to me, he's out of here.
Arteta's not going to stand for that, but
no.
Let me go through a few. I mean, do you expect Rob Holding to still be here?
That's the one I'm kind of stuck on, and I mean, oddly enough, yes, I do.
Really? Well, okay, interesting.
The reason I do is because I don't see us going out and buying 4 or 5 players in the summer.
You think it'd be 3 or something? Yeah.
I see us buying 3 players. I see us potentially buying a left back. I see us potentially buying a midfield. Definitely buying a midfielder, and I see us potentially buying a center forward.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe a right winger. Maybe as a 4th player, but I just don't. Maybe it's maybe it's definitely a right winger, maybe a center forward, something of that effect. But I just don't see us going out there. We just bought Kiwior. Saliba's a contract that we need to iron out.
That's the biggest thing, isn't it? Yeah.
I just don't like Rob Holding. He is who he is. Just keep him around. He's
interesting.
Center back. I mean, how much better do you need him to be?
Yeah. He wouldn't have been playing if 2 players were fit. I see what you mean, but let's go Balogun.
So that was my question about Eddie, right?
Yep.
Was
of course, come back to Eddie. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say Flo Balogun is in the team. is Eddie going to be part of that team as well?
I think it's really unlikely they both stay. Actually, I think it's more likely they both leave than they both stay. To be honest, if I was going to bet on both leave or both stay, I'd bet on both leave. I presume one stays, one goes. I think that's the most likely thing. The thing is, I find it very difficult to believe that Eddie would be the first one to go simply because of the wage. He's on 100 grand a week. Balogun's on 32 grand a week. And which one's had the better season? You'd have to say Balogun, wouldn't you? So who's got there's way more pull for Balogun than there is for Eddie. And I think we might be in a situation with Balogun where we're like in that Willock situation. We might be in that situation where we're like, his stock may well get higher. It might be one that we regret, but we could also be thinking, will his stock ever get this high again? Like he's literally the top goal scorer in France. And I think I had Balogun down as one of my 5 to be sold. I think he's going to be sold. I think he's going to be sold. And I'm not saying I'm happy with it. I'm saying I think we could sell him for 40 to 50 million, and he's a player that hasn't touched our first team, our first team that's had the most successful season since the Invincible season, and we will probably look at that and go, we can get 50 million in here and use it towards the squad, and it's not weakened us one bit. And I just think we're going to do it. I think that's what we'll do.
I see the logic behind that. I would hate to not. I would hate to see him go and be the top scorer,
right,
in England or something to that effect.
Don't sell him within the league. That would be my first point. Yeah, of that one. Yeah,
put all the buyback clauses and everything in there in the world to sell on. Yeah, everything. But I think
exactly
that would be tough. But
what about Smith Rowe? Sorry. What do you think? You think Eddie would be more likely sold then?
I do.
Yeah, interesting.
Personally, I do. I think the English tax on Eddie, his recent somewhat success, his exposure as that run that he had with us while we were top of the league, could generate a market for Eddie, especially in England. I think a team somewhere in the middle of the table could really use his services, and I think that we could go on and sell him for a decent fee. His wage at 100 grand is high, but in the Premier League, that's not that big of a wage, all things considered. And I
very interesting.
It is, and I think that it would be easier for us as a squad to sell Eddie and keep Balogun on his reduced wage and get that delta in the wage bill to commit to some other player that we're trying to bring in the summer. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't know what Balogun's contract situation is from us, but
I think he's got 2 years. It's basically sign or sell. It is. He's got 2 years. I mean, that's the reasoning behind it. I think
it's pretty easy to convince him, though, that you're going to get a lot of first-team football next season.
Or if you say you're taking Eddie's role, I think he takes it. I think you'd be mad not to take it. You'd be mental. I know he's played every game, but he's played every game for a mid-table League One side. I mean, you're not going to get that with a top side. You know, I don't think so.
I think because as great as Eddie can be, I don't see him being better than he is now.
Yeah, I don't see him being better than Jesus ever.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I agree.
I don't see the potential in Eddie that Flo Balogun has.
Right.
Right. And I think that just from that perspective, you have to take the chance on the guy that's gone out on loan and been prolific.
You make a good argument there, because the one thing to say for Arteta is when he's never used a player like Saliba and they've gone out on loan and done fantastically well, it's different to him sending Guendouzi or Nuno Tavares on loan after using them and realising they're not good enough. He's not done that with Balogun, so he's basically never given Balogun a chance.
Never.
So I think it's just such an interesting what's going to happen, because ultimately I kind of trust Arteta and Edu. So it's just, for me, it's just like I'm curious to see what happens.
Me too.
I'd
love to be a fly on the wall when they discuss those two players, just because I think, like, if I'm leading the conversation, I'm saying we know who Eddie is. This is the highest possibly we'll ever get a fee for him. He's an academy player. It's pure profit. Like Flo Balogun on $30,000 a week, and we got to come and look what he's done. Like, we'll look what we can offer him.
Yeah.
You know, I just, to me, it makes a lot of sense. But if I look, and I'm going to just go through the forwards, I would think that Eddie's going to be that guy.
What's Smith Rowe? What's your thoughts on him?
I think Smith Rowe will stay just because of the recent contract signing. I think he's had a tough season with his groin surgery.
I hope he stays.
I don't think it's fair if we were to sell him. To me, it doesn't feel right, all things considered.
That one doesn't feel right to me either.
I think Mo Elneny will be one that goes. I think he's just on a 1-year contract, isn't he?
They've signed it, though. They signed it after he had his surgery. So that would be interesting if they got rid. Though I'll tell you one player that has been talked about being sold has been Jorginho. That this was such a stopgap for us, and he's always wanted to go back to Italy. He was only
had 6 months on his contract, right?
I think there's 12 months left at this point. I think he signed
an 18-year deal when we in January.
18,
could be wrong.
it's 18 months. So he has 12 months. So he has 12 months or something like that left. So he could. I mean, in theory, that could also be one that you look at. But I think you said Tierney, Eddie. I said Tierney, Balogun. I added Holding to that one. So it'll be interesting. I hope we are a little bit ruthless in certain aspects. I think we have to recoup money in certain areas, right? Like if we want to do what we want to do as a squad.
Would you be surprised if there were links to Thomas Partey being sold this summer?
Well, I wouldn't if other things weren't going on, like the stuff that we don't really know about. We the off the field stuff that. I think that's hard, isn't it? How does someone come in for a player if they've got all these allegations or alleged things going on off the field? Like Basuma, for example, like he basically wasn't sold by Brighton until, that was all sort of figured out, was he? So I wouldn't be surprised, like in terms of the age of the player, where he's at, everything's telling me that we probably are seeing that and trying to replenish the squad and rejuvenate the squad, but because of everything else, it makes it really difficult for me to understand where we'd be at in terms of a sale and if there'd be what type of interest there'd be. I don't know if it
would probably be foreign interest, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't see like Liverpool or United or anybody like that trying to go in for Thomas Partey, but to me when I look at the players that we're being linked with for like those big blockbuster deals that we're trying to do, it's in his position.
Or could it finally be Xhaka?
I don't think Xhaka's going anywhere. Genuinely,
I don't think so either. I
think Mikel Arteta looks at him with such high, he has such a high opinion of him.
I agree.
The type of character he is, the guy's practically bulletproof.
Yeah.
I mean, I see him at Arsenal until his wheels fall off.
He seems more settled than ever as well. I mean, in terms of his mindset, the way he is with the group, the trust that he has from the group and vice versa.
Absolutely.
It would be an odd one. It would be a very odd one. The Partey one is definitely a conundrum I've thought about. I found it hard to go too much in my head to it. And obviously, as we said before, the biggest thing in terms of sort of play is you have to sign up Saliba and Saka. I mean, that's almost the most important thing before you even do anything sell or buy. But the sell area is very interesting this season because there's potentially 3 or 4 sales there that actually can recoup money, which we haven't had for a while. But before I let you go, though, I do want to, because it's a big game at the weekend. We've got a terrible record up north this season for having such a good season. We lost to Everton, we drew with Liverpool, we lost to United, and we lost to City. And there's not too many games there up north, and they're pretty tough games as it is. But we go to Newcastle. Obviously, we've got the memory of being beaten at Newcastle last season, and that they are very, very much on form. My question is, what's your prediction? But also, what's your prediction for the lineup? Does he stick with what's worked against Chelsea, or is the one conundrum that Jorginho or Partey position?
I want to hear your lineup first, and then I'll give you one.
My lineup, I have to consider the double pivot. I would go with the same lineup against Chelsea. However, you're going to think this is kind of controversial. I would rest Bukayo Saka, and I would put Gabriel Jesus on the right, and I would put Trossard centrally. For me personally, Bukayo Saka looks like his legs he just needs a break. And I don't think this is the game to necessarily give it to him. But I also I basically have watched him the last 3 or 4 games thinking this isn't the Bukayo Saka that I've watched, and he never looks tired, and he plays all the minutes all the time. And at some point, we've got to give him a breather. And I'm just wondering if Jesus has never played on the right for us. It's a very big long shot. But I think, how are we getting Trossard in the team again? Are we dropping Martinelli? I don't want to drop Martinelli. Not for this game. We've already dropped him for one. He's fresh now. So let's bring him back in. Who's the least fresh out the front 4? I'd probably say Saka. So I would play Jesus on the right. I play Trossard centrally. I would play Kiwior exactly the same position, and central midfield I would just edge bringing Partey back in over Jorginho.
I agree with a lot that you said there. So did our formation look a little different against Chelsea to you? Did we play with kind of 2 deep midfielders? To me, it looked like Odegaard and Jorginho were kind of playing at the base of the midfield together, which was a little different than what we've been doing with him kind of as more an advanced number 10. Did you notice that?
Yeah, Odegaard was definitely on the ball a lot more in deeper areas. I agree, but then I didn't really for a long period feel like it was sort of like a double pivot, if you like. But it was hard. It was hard to tell. So it's possible. I just feel Jorginho, Odegaard, Xhaka, we're going up against Bruno Gomes, Willock, Jolinton. It's a very physical, pacey, athletic team. I'm wondering if that's not a very good matchup.
Yeah, no, I would not play Jorginho from the start in this match. So I would go with an unchanged back 5. I would definitely do that. I will be honest though, I'm very worried about Zinchenko defensively. Again,
Almiron or Murphy. It's going to be Almiron or Murphy on the right, I think.
I'm just generally worried about the defensive frailties against this team. I mean, Newcastle's been scoring for fun lately, and they are powerful and fast. So that does worry me. I don't quite know what the alternative to that would be outside of Kieran Tierney, but we all know that I don't think that would. I just don't think Arteta will do it. Would I do it? Possibly. Do I think Arteta would do it? No.
Right. Right. I see where you're coming from with it.
Yeah. My midfield would be Xhaka, Partey, and Odegaard, definitely. And
what is your front 3?
My front 3.
It's hard, isn't it?
I would play Martinelli on the left. I would play Trossard on the left because I think he needs to be in the team. I would play Martinelli up front, and I would play Saka on the right. I hear what you're saying, and I know Saka's probably got the second most minutes, I think, in the team. But Arteta's just not. I think he said as much. Like, if you want to be at the top level, you play twice a week, and that's just how it is. And if it were me, I might sit him, but again, similar to Zinchenko, I don't think Arteta will do it.
Yeah.
I think he's going to put him in the ice bath, give him a couple bananas, make sure he doesn't cramp, and get him back out there. Yeah.
No, I see where you're coming from. I just look at their fullbacks. You've got Kieran Trippier on the right. I think Martinelli's an interesting matchup for Trippier. You make him keep running. He's good, but he's an aging fullback. He's not as fast as Martinelli. But then on the left, they kind of mimic what I don't want to say a poor man's version of what City do, but they put Dan Burn on the left. He's like 6'5" left back, and Saka against Ake. Ake had him in his pocket, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So let's put up Jesus and put his arse into the back of Dan Burn for 90 minutes and see how he handles it. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
It's interesting, definitely. I mean, I think this is one of this Chelsea lineup. I was very anxiously awaiting to see what he would do. This one I'm just as anxious to see because I think there's a lot of opportunity for Arteta to change it up or stick with it. I'd be very curious to see what he does. I genuinely can't predict it. But if it were me, that would probably be my 11 for the day.
And with that, what is your prediction for this game and first score?
I will stick with the winning run. I'm going to go Arsenal 2-1 Newcastle. And my first goal scorer is going to be Granit Xhaka, I think.
Nice. Wow. Okay. Well, you're a lot more positive than me.
I just think we have to, Jack. I think we have to.
I know we have to, but I do have this horrible sort of feeling when we go up north this season. I've had this sort of weird feeling in my mind. I've got this horrible feeling that we could lose this one again, like we did last season, which is very negative of me. But I haven't predicted many a defeat. But I'll go like a 2-2. I'll go a 2-2, a draw, and you know, on the negative side, we've got to look at both sides here. I think there's a very small. We want to push City all the way, but if we happen not to win this game and lose or draw it, the positive there, if we get a draw, is basically, I believe, if I do the math right, we basically wrap up second place, which for a second was a little bit of a concern of mine. If we, for example, if we lost to Chelsea and then we lost to Newcastle, they'd have been 4 points behind us. So, you know, it's weird how quickly things can change. So, you know, that, and also the secondary thing is we give Newcastle one more point where Liverpool might not catch them. So, you know, there's always positives to look at. Obviously, all you want to do is win every game, and that's all I want to do. But I'm going to go 2-2, and I'm going to go Jesus with a first goal for Arsenal. I do have some reservational sort of worries about Kiwior in this game, and I think he's going to be a player, Kiwior, but he's coming up against some real physical players. And the one thing you could argue, there was this little push off from Havertz that people will keep reminding me of, that he maybe looks a little bit physically not quite prepared for the intensity of the Premier League. So I think it's going to be tough for him. He's playing in slightly different position to what he's used to. You know, he's pretty new to the team. It's a new back line for us, and he's going to be coming up against Isaac and Callum Wilson. And these are fast, physical players.
Some rumors of Gabriel not being fit for this weekend. Do you think there's anything to that?
Oh, that's a great one to touch on, because he kept falling down, didn't he? He had his ankle and then his hamstring. Arteta said he was a doubt. If Gabriel's not fit this weekend, I think our chances drop dramatically. Obviously, I think I
agree. I would completely change my prediction.
yeah, we're making the assumption that he's going to be okay. And you know what? I do think he will be okay, because when you see players sort of fight through stuff and continue to run and move, and then eventually they come off, I think there was a little bit of gamesmanship at that point as well, where we just wanted to slow the game down and see it out a little bit.
He was giving us Quetta a mouthful, wasn't he, when he was walking off?
Yeah, I love that. Get out of there, Asper. Yeah. You're nobody anymore. Look forward to try and stay up. But mate, it's been a great chat. I've kept you too long. But we are on Twitter at Purely Arsenal FP. We're on YouTube. I know a lot of our listeners are all still on Spotify and on the Apple Podcast app, so we post those links as well. At Purely Arsenal FP on Twitter, at Purely Arsenal on YouTube as well. And Garet's one of our guests, and obviously we've got James and Neil, and we sort of filter through a few great guests on the podcast, so we appreciate your time. Garet, fingers crossed we're chatting again after Sunday's game, where we've got a big win up north this season against a top four side. It'd be nice to see, especially after what happened in the first game, where we should have beaten them and they time wasted from about the 12th minute onwards. So they won't be doing any of that in this game, I'm sure of that. So let's see where we go with it.
Keep the dream alive, Jack.
That's it. Keep believing.
Let's keep it going.
Got to believe up the Arsenal, mate.
Right, if we don't believe, what's the point of any of this, right? What are we even doing?
Exactly. No one else is gonna. That's for sure. Up the Arsenal. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Garet. Top man.